Good evening. Please welcome the president of Alpha Alpha Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Brother Dele Oladapo.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today begins what we call Brotherhood Week. So on behalf of the brothers of Alpha Alpha Lambda chapter of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, welcome. Our platform from a leadership perspective is focused on brotherhood, service to community, and fraternity. We're delighted to have a public forum, having engaged discussions with our public leaders who are also members of our fraternity, so that we can discuss the matters that affect us as Black Americans in this country of ours. I'd like to turn it back over to Fred Davis, and a personal thank you for all of his tireless efforts for all of the programming that we're about to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother President Oladapo. So let me introduce our two moderators for this evening's first panel. First is Brother Dr. Basil Smikle. He's a professor at Rutgers University, Newark, in the School of Public Affairs and Administration, and lectures at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs and Teachers College. He, with over 15 years in higher education and 25 years of a career dedicated to public service, Dr. Smikle regularly shares insights on electoral politics, governance, and public policy on national media outlets such as MSNBC, CNN, and Bloomberg TV. Thank you, Brother Smikle, for being the moderator for today. Second moderator is actually Brother Freddy Davis, and he just recently graduated from the University of Chicago with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in philosophy. He's a paralegal in the city of Orange Township, where he serves a dual role in the Warren administration and the Law Department. He currently shares as the co-chair of Alpha Alpha Lambda's Social Action Committee. And Brother Davis plans to attend Rutgers Law School in the fall of 2021. So Brother Smikle and Brother Davis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brother President, the brothers of Alpha Alpha Lambda, the Brick City office. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to my colleague and friend, Brother Davis. There are many Brothers Davis here today. So I say hello to all of you and to the panelists that we have this evening. What can I say in a brief overview of what cities are experiencing right now? Last year, this time, we were in the middle of a pandemic and concerned about our future in the midst of what would be a historic presidential race. And of course, we've seen the outcome of that with the election of a historic vice president in our sister, Kamala Harris. But there are still real concerns about what's happening in cities. The administration has sent some funding to states and localities, but we've seen so much just in the last few months, an insurrection in our Congress, in a building and in an institution that one of our panelists this evening, Congressman Rangel, gave so much of his life to. We've seen real concerns about what's happening in terms of our schools in our cities. What is going to happen with our students who may be experiencing a 1 to 2 year lag? What does that mean for their lives as they're matriculating in their coursework and for the rest of their lives, especially as they transition from high school into college? We have concerns about criminal justice, of course, especially as we've come off of a verdict from the George Floyd court case, but there's still more work to be done. And in fact, on a panel that I moderated a year ago, hearing that over 95% of the elected prosecutors in this country are white. And what does that mean for folks who are seeking change in our criminal justice system? And that electoral politics and the ability to get people elected and who gets elected is first and foremost on the minds of folks here in New York City. We are on the precipice of a mayoral primary, which is coming up in just under 2 weeks on June 22nd, where where many concerns like governance, management, the fate of small businesses in our city, gentrification, healthcare, as I mentioned before, entrepreneurship are all on the ballot. And so as we look at what's happening here in New York, in Newark, and across the country, what can we say about the state of Black America and the state of our cities and Black Americans in our cities as we move through 2021 and into the next few years, particularly as we get into our midterm elections in 2022. My brother, Fred Davis, will introduce Mayors Baraka and McGehee, but I have the unique opportunity to introduce my good brother, Charles Rangel. If I could just say a few words about Brother Rangel, I'll speak from his bio, and I know he's heard this 1,000 times, but it brings me a tremendous amount of pride to be able to say these words. He's a war hero. He's a history-making Congress member, a master lawmaker, and a founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus. He led the Ways and Means Committee. He served for 23 terms in the House of Representatives and was cited as the most effective lawmaker in the House. And how important is lawmaking in today's Congress, right? And the art of lawmaking. He grew up on the other side of the tracks on Lenox Avenue in Harlem and was transformed from a high school dropout to a war hero after volunteering for service in the Army during the Korean War. Wounded, he was awarded a Purple Heart Bronze Star for valor after leading his surviving comrades from behind enemy lines. With the aid of the GI Bill, he earned degrees from NYU and St. John's University Law School, began his public service career as an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, later a New York State Assembly member, and went to Washington, D.C. in 1971 to serve in the House after defeating legendary Congress member Adam Clayton Powell Jr. I'll just say this. Of all the things that Congressman Rangel has been a part of, whether it's earned income tax credit, as I mentioned before, the founding of the Congressional Black Caucus, what I am most proud of is that for most of my adult life, he was my member of Congress. And I had the opportunity to meet him when I was a young graduate student working at the then just formed Empowerment Zone, a bill that he worked on, which gave $100 million to, I think in the first round, 6 cities across the country. The city and state of New York matched it each with $100 million, $300 million to figure out how we were going to rejuvenate Harlem. And I had the pleasure of meeting with him and interacting with him, working with him to find people to get on the board. And what I loved about the Congress member is that he always had time for a good story about history. He always had he always took a moment to talk about this moment in the context of history. And although his good friend, our dearly departed brother, David Dinkins would say, "I got socks older than you," it was okay. He was always willing and ready to give a piece of advice and counsel. And the second thing that I want to raise to conclude this introduction of our good brother, Congressman Rangel, is that I want to wish him in advance a happy 91st birthday, which we will celebrate this Friday. So Brother Rangel, thank you so much for joining us today. I know our brother Davis has 2 more introductions to go, but I look forward to your remarks on the other end of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Basil.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Brother Freddy Davis, and I am very honored and humbled to be co-moderating this panel with somebody as influential and well-known as Brother Basil, Smikle, and as well as the guests that we have, Congressman Charles Rangel, as well as the 2 men I'm about to introduce right now. Starting first in alphabetical order, we have Mayor Ras Baraka. He is the 40th mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey, and is now in his 2nd term. As a progressive, he has led a city once known as trouble into a city with the narrative of a city of opportunity around it. He has lowered crime rates, as well as led an increase in investment and growth in the city. And just for context, Newark is about 50% African American. Our next panelist is Mayor Frank McGehee. He's the mayor of Maplewood. He has served in municipal politics for over a decade. His municipality has 25,000 residents in it, of which about a third are Black. And he has over 2 decades of experience in management and leadership at high-profile startups and Fortune 500 companies, including Disney Plus, DraftKings, Tidal, Harris Entertainment, and Bank of America. And with that, we'll let our panelists lead off the discussion, starting with Congressman Rangel.
Thank you, Brother Davis, and thank you, Basil, for a very flattering introduction. And let me tell you that I do not know what contribution I can make to this panel, but I want you to know that you've made this old man very happy to participate, because right now in this stage of my life, I am satisfied that in the African-American community and even in the broader white community, that we're moving toward a stage in American history that we've never been through before. I would like to believe that this is the second Reconstruction. And I say that because we never had really the first. And I would like to point out before I share my thoughts with you that Basil didn't say that most, all of my achievements have been with teamwork, whether it's working with the Congressional Black Caucus or the leaders of the legislative bodies, but especially the Gang of Four. And to show you my admiration of the mayors that's on this panel, when I first started getting in politics was in the late 60s, in my late years in the law school, and I was participating in the freedom struggle in the South. And that's where I really saw the deep-seated hatred that some white folks had for us as a people. And that's where I came into contact with Percy Sutton. And then he brought along with him Basil. And Dave Dinkins was close to the county leader, Ray Jones, who, if you had any political ambition, you had to be close to him. And that's how the four of us got together. But my luck was that when I found out that all of them wanted to become mayor, and that was the last thing in the world that I wanted to be, because the buck stops at the mayor's desk. And so I want to thank you mayors for the role that you're going to have to play in this new construction. And that's Black folks, no matter what station they are in life, that the depth of racism in this country has been so well organized from the Constitution that had no idea that they were talking about non-European women or permeated all of our educations, that talking about it made your best white friends feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. The period that this country is going through, not thanks to Trump, but his ability to pull these races out from under the rocks that they've always been. For you and I to know that the struggle ahead is going to have to deal with what 73 million people voted for. And it just seems to me that we as a people are better organized to deal with the new Reconstruction in a better way than before. I mean, if I was to get involved in telling you about the 13th Amendment and how going to jail would not remove the possibility of you being a slave, or being able to work without pay, and to see how that's been permeated in our criminal justice system, well, that's another thing. But the bright part of it is that no longer can white folks hide behind the argument that my parents never held slaves. We now know that the burden of carrying the slavery and what has happened as a result to us as the people may not be reparations in terms of dollars and cents, but just like I spent 4 years of my life in the Army and a year in Korea and in combat, and I got reparations. I got reparations for paying me back in payments to go to high school and payments to go to college and preferential treatment, if you will, in getting into law school. And that seems to me what we as a people are entitled to. And if you forget the morality, with the challenge that we're facing today, with most of the nations of the world being of color, it just makes one hell of a lot of sense for us to get our act together and to use all of the powers that all people, no matter where they come from, and of course the African-American population, is in a position to make this a stronger and better country and become the beneficiaries. And so I know I'm breaking all of your rules, but I know when you pass 90, you get away with a whole lot of stuff. So I am so pleased that Alpha is involved with this, that the mayors took time to participate, that Basil, who never left us. Most of the time when someone runs for public office and lose, they don't hang in there. But Basil ain't, once you're bitten, you're supposed to hang in there until I can't tell you how many times Percy Sutton lost 11 times. And I tell you, I took advantage of that by waiting until we got together. So there's so much opportunity, but there's still a struggle ahead. And thank you so much for inviting me to participate. Thank you so much, Alpha Brothers and participants.
Thank you, sir.
Brother Mayor Baraka, if you could follow that up. I'm sorry, that's you're the mayor of Newark, and I know that's going to be, I know this is not, like, I know your job is hard, and this is probably going to be harder. So please follow that up.
Sure, absolutely. First, I just want to disagree with Congressman Brother Rangel when he said he has nothing to offer. He has a wealth of information and experience to offer all of us. And any opportunity we get to sit with him and talk and learn is an incredible experience. So I'm glad and humbled to be on a panel with you, brother, and with all of the folks on this panel this evening as well. And thank you to the brothers of Alpha Alpha Lambda, Alpha Phi fraternity for making this happen. So as a leader, a mayor of a city, you don't have the luxury of pessimism, right? You have to be optimistic all the time. You can't take people a place that you can't see yourself. So at the end of the day, I do believe, as Brother Rangel pointed out, that this generation is more poised to deal with all of the issues that we have than we've ever been. We have more resources, we have more information, we are better organized. There are more of us that have access to wealth and institutions and authority than in any other time during history. But on the flip of that, the converse of that is, let's just take New Jersey, which has the largest wealth gap in the nation. The average median wealth for white families is about $300,000. For Latino families, about $7,000, and for African-American families, about $6,000. The wealth gap is so large in New Jersey, it would take generations of families to be able to even close that wealth gap, begin to close that wealth gap. There's a saying, African saying, when we say, how's the children? And to determine how society is. And if we said that about our children, how are our children doing? Mostly still segregated in public school system, still segregated in housing, for the most part, in this state and in this country. About 70% of our children still go to school in segregated communities. And they're segregated both by race and by class, which dictates the outcomes that our children are able to experience or be a part of. Not simply because they're segregated by race, but also because they're segregated by wealth and class at the same time. And as you can see, what's happening around the country, the outright kind of vicious and vile racist attacks that are happening, not just through policing, but through ordinary, families and people through white supremacy that is happening in this country and is becoming more and more prominent. And I think because Trump kind of took the the barriers down and allowed, as Brother Rangel, Congressman Rangel pointed out, allowed them to come forward and do the things that are happening now in a present sense. So I think that there's a lot that we have to do. We're in a very, very difficult place, but we also are at a crossroads, at a precipice where we can use this as an opportunity to accelerate our growth, to expand what we're doing in our community, to dig our heels in, to organize even more, to begin to reach for things that we've never reached for before, to have a radical imagination, as Brother Cornel West talks about all the time, to change what we see and use the opportunity to do that. Or we can watch this moment pass us by and begin to witness white supremacy in its rawest form and not use this as an opportunity to, again, reconstruct or construct what a more perfect union would look like, what equity would look like, what empowerment of our communities and families would look like. And as a mayor of a city, we have resources and opportunity and access to get these things done. And as a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, we have an army that's being built all over the world that's able to engage right now to make this reconstruction very real for our families and make it so we can actually feel change in our communities and not just talk about it.
Well said.
Thank you, Brother Mayor Baraka. Brother Mayor McGehee, if you could follow that up with just a few words on your thoughts on the state of Black America in our cities today, that would be great.
I appreciate that, brother. And first, I just want to thank all the brothers. This opportunity is great for me because you're just focusing on doing the work. So it's not very often you get the opportunity to reflect on the work. And, when you talk about the state of Black America in our cities, and we have different types of municipalities of all different sizes and percentages of us, it's complicated and it's volatile. When you think about the years that we've been in the system, in a municipal ecosystem where we have constantly resided at the bottom of the caste, socially, economically, and educationally, existing in a society and a system that continues to reinvent itself from slavery to Jim Crow with the sole purpose to keep us time and time again at the bottom of the caste. A judicial system designed to lock us up and keep us locked up. I mean, let's think about earlier this year, this system was designed where it's take multiple dash cams, cell phones, body cameras to prove without a reasonable doubt that a Black man was murdered, without a reasonable doubt. But yet, with all that hard evidence, I know I did, I think a lot of us still question if justice was going to prevail for Brother Floyd. In our cities, our Black students, including my own municipality, cannot even gather on the steps of the public library or schools without being called suspicious or discouraged from doing so. So it is volatile and it is complicated. But the state of Black America in our cities is also evolving. As we're trying to maintain our communities, but also reestablishing our communities. As Brother Rangel said, the station in life. We have brothers and sisters that came to municipalities and were the first ones there, and they're aging out. And as they're aging out, the people that are moving in don't look like them. So how do you maintain? But at the same time, we have other families that are looking in our area, looking to, maybe leave the city and go to suburban life. And now they're starting to establish themselves in various pockets of communities in our municipalities. The state of Black America is evolving because of infrastructure. Our town, we're looking at making sure that we provide opportunities, and I'm talking about sewers and paving roads across our entire footprint. It's very important because infrastructure, if you don't have that infrastructure, then that impacts your property values, that impacts your generational wealth. Zoning, everyone is into business development and new development, as we are. I'm pro-development, but making sure that we prevent new development that rips out the character of the trailblazers of the communities, which were first Black and Black owned and Black run in our community, in our cities. Business development itself, it's evolving too, because more and more I'm having opportunities to have conversations with developers that are Black or minority owned businesses and trying to find them a path. Because, one thing we've always learned is that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And a lot of people that look like me have not been at the table in my municipality and others like it. So therefore, when we have Black developers who are trying to do things, they have no one who can be that advocate for them and get them that seat or get them an opportunity or look at doing things for them, such as a pilot or things that will help them along the way. And then they can move on from there. School resources. The biggest thing is technology. We saw with COVID, just a huge discrepancy in technology for our students of color versus our non-students of color. And we also saw the systemic racism that exists in our school districts, evidenced by when our school district went back to a hybrid learning, that over 50% of kids of color, Black, Haitian, and so forth, including my daughter, opted to stay virtual 100% because they didn't want to be in that environment where they had to put on their face and work twice as hard to get just as much. Small business owners, when you talk about, shop small businesses, I say shop Black small businesses as well. In our municipality, and starting on the 12th of June, we're going to have a Juneteenth week. And we're going to have a huge Black market of all the Black business owners from all types of verticals and industries that'll be occurring. A Black farmers market, a Black market, if you will, celebrating all the types of Black businesses we have, clothing, retail, food, so forth. And also raising awareness, not only to our white community and other people in our community about all these amazing Black business owners and Black businesses, bike shops and so forth in our municipality, but also raising awareness for each other. So we understand, wow, that's Black owned, okay, that's Black owned. So raising that awareness so that you spend your dollar with people that look like you and believe in you. Elected officials, and I touched on that before, it is imperative that we have elected officials up and down the ballot. So from, the mayor from the little municipalities, obviously all the way into the White House. It's so imperative to have that vertical integration, have representation, because without that representation, we have no placement, we have no pillar. And then social unification. And that's important. Time and time again, we also be proud of who we are, what we've done, our education, our wealth, our opportunities, but we should find ways to celebrate that and to provide opportunities for others. It's your business, if you have an opportunity to hire someone, obviously be fair, but try to look out for those who may not have that opportunity if you weren't in that seat. So important. And that's that's of course in our municipalities as well. And finally, I think the state of our cities and Black Americans in our cities is our children. Like I said, I'm raising a young daughter, hopefully to be a future queen, if you will. And it's imperative to me that I'm an advocate, an ambassador for her education and her future. And we need to do that for all our young people, because everything we do is like the baton, you pass it to the next person. And that's how I feel about the state of Black Americans in our cities. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, brother. We are actually right on time. We are about 30 minutes from our closing statements. So I wanted to start by throwing out a number of questions where, I would give everybody the opportunity to respond. Some or all of you could respond. But I wanted to just throw out the first question very quickly, because both you, Brother McGehee, and talked about intergenerational wealth. And Brother Baraka, you talked about income inequality or wealth disparities. So I guess my first question, therefore, is what are your thoughts about this, what's been thrown out lately, which is really not a new idea, but it has become popular in recent years, economic guaranteed income or universal basic income, some kind of guaranteed income. How do you feel about that as mayors, and perhaps Congressman Rangel, you have a thought as well, but particularly as mayors, how do you feel about that idea, that issue in your city? Does it solve some of the problems that you discussed in terms of both wealth disparity and intergenerational wealth?
Well, I'll start if I can. I'm a part of a national organization, Mayors for Guaranteed Income, that was started by Mayor Tubbs from Stockton, California. About 50 mayors or so that are signed up for that now. We're actually already begun dispersing funds to about 40 families in Newark. In August, we're going to lift that number to 400 more. I think it is very, very helpful. It's the same as stimulus checks. We understand that giving people these stimulus checks help them with their families, their economy, help the economy, but also help them with things like food, with rent, with housing, all the things that many people take for granted. I mean, the study showed that if a family had just a $400 emergency in a month, that it would be catastrophic for many families in America of many different nationalities. So particularly in our communities where the inequity is so great, I think that cash payments, and the thing about these cash payments is that there are no restrictions. Like it's outside of the social net programs that have all these restrictions about what you can do with your dollars, how much you can spend on what. These are cash payments that you can use for whatever it is that you think is important. And most people have been using it on food, on rent and housing, some even to further their educational opportunities. And this has been proven through the stimulus check. So I believe that it is helpful. We are going to push this in Newark until we can force the federal government to begin to take a position on this, and prayerfully in a positive way to continue what they're doing now in terms of stimulus funding.
If I may, thank you for the question. I agree with the mayor, Brother Mayor. It's I'm a proponent for it. We don't have a particular plan in Maplewood, but it does result in access and equity, and access and opportunity. When you provide funding to an individual or even to a corporation, they take that money and they invest it in where they are. And in this case, individuals will invest it as in basic needs, but also in opportunities to advance where they are. And so the stimulation of economic of an economic stimulus is not going to be misused or abused as a sort of disposable income. It's reinvesting in yourself, your community, and your quality of life. So for me, I'm a proponent of it. And I think that a program that Brother Mayor Ross talked about is a program that, I think multiple municipalities, including my own, should take a deeper look at.
I think that I am targeting in on reparations, not in lieu of a guaranteed income, but because for the first time, I think, white folks are beginning to understand what this country was all about and the great price that Africans have paid, not only in being responsible for the economic advancements that were made during slavery, but also, as all of you has touched on, the fact that some form of slavery, some form of white preference, some form of who we are still allowed us to fight the battles for this country as I and others have done, and still carry the burden of having most people to believe that they were just entitled because of their color. And I'm talking about the most liberal and the nicest white folks in the world. Now I see that they're beginning to understand that the price we're paying for slavery, we pay today. Whether we're talking about cameras, whether we're talking about Tulsa, intelligent people who love this country are now beginning to see how it was formed. And the best that they can say is that the Constitution has to have, say, in order to establish a more perfect union. It seems to me like in any family or any outfit, if you're trying to protect what you got as the United States of America, and you're threatened by other people, many of whom don't look like the power structure, that somebody will get into a room, not necessarily a spiritual room, but an economic and a national security room, and say, how the hell can we compete if we don't have everyone on the same level?
Right.
And nobody has a problem in giving a veteran a foot up. Why? Because they believe they're entitled. And I think that soon people are going to understand that we as a people are entitled. And for that reason, I am so excited. As the mayors have said, as everyone has said, we're in better shape to take advantage of that now than we were after the Emancipation Proclamation, which meant nothing to most of us.
Brother Smikle, if you don't mind, the young person in me sort of wants to jump in here, and we're going to go a little out of order, but because of what the Congressman has brought up previously, especially in regards to the fact that teamwork had helped him accomplish some of his greatest achievements, I really want to turn this back to the mayors and to the congressmen for their own ideas. When I was crafting this question, I was thinking of Mayor Antar Lumumba from Jackson, Mississippi, and it's basically as follows. How do you feel when you deal with politicians on the state and county level when you're trying to implement plans that they then try and block? And I was especially reminded about this, Brother Mayor Baraka, when you were talking about how you're a part of this association of mayors. So I'm sure that this is why you'll be super useful as well, Congressman, on the national level. This definitely happens in a lot of places where you have like these progressive Black mayors or Black mayors in general pushing, trying to push their own legislation through, and sort of what the white supremacy power is like, well, no, not too fast. I feel like a teacher here, so I'm just going to call on someone.
Man, Rob, take that one, sir.
Yeah. So, wow. I think it's like not just the state level; it's county, state, federal level, and the closer it gets to you, the more debilitating it becomes, the more difficult. And when I say debilitating, it just rots away your ability to organize with your folks and move forward, because their job is to break that up, to make sure that that does not happen, that you do not have a solid base of people to move past just a small level, right? So and what happens is, so there's a few of us fighting over the 6 positions that they give us, right? And then to go beyond that and go get more power, more resource, it takes a deeper level of organization, more resources, seriousness and commitment. And the higher you go, the more dangerous your enemies become. And so as you try to create policy, something as simple as Brother McGehee trying to do, Juneteenth week or something like that, to something as big as trying to create a civilian complaint review board for the entire state of New Jersey. You get blockage everywhere you go. And so that's why it's important what he said, that we have to have people all up and down vertically the spectrum of elected positions and appointed positions, by the way, not just elected positions, and that we find a way to be congruent and meet and talk and do all of these things as regularly as we possibly can, because it is important, and they will block the things that you do, and so you have to be more shrewd. And I know Congressman Rangel can ad lib on this or talk about it some more. You have to navigate that, be more shrewd, have a longer reach, be able to get in here and negotiate and compromise and do the things you need to do in order to advance your position, and understand what that position is, based on your strengths and weaknesses.
Let me, Brother Davis, share with you that we all would end up basically saying how many different ways we're going to have to struggle to succeed. But I can tell you one thing, as the mayor said, in the Congress, when you find that there is a group or someone that is blocking where you want to go, like in life, you have to find out
Right.
what is important to that person. When I told Mayor Baraka of me calling the conference of mayor to speak to that time with Mayor Daley was no friend of mine. His buddy was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee that had the ability to bring things to local government. And Chicago wanted it. And I was working with the mayor of Chicago to tell the chairman that if you help Rangel, you're helping Newark, you're helping Chicago, you're helping Boston. And the last thing is that I was the first one to be able to get a free trade trade agreement with 90 countries in Africa. People had no concern about anything in Africa, not Republicans and not Americans. And when people saw that the entire non-existing Jewish caucus in the House was supporting me, they thought, how in the hell would the Jewish community be concerned with Rangel's bill that had to do with Africa? Well, it was the African trade ministers that came with the idea that they would like to have some of their wares go to Israel and accept it with Israel before they were able to accept the tax benefit in the United States. And when they found out they were going to be the beneficiary, somehow they had an interest in the bill. And so whether you have to help somebody or if you're an elected official or hurt somebody, you have to see where that power is and to have it with a smile, because once you win, you still have a struggle in life and in politics and in this country. And so I don't care what the problem is. I play poker. If you got a bad hand and you don't like it and you got to throw it in, then you can't win. But if you don't give up, as John Lewis, he said it all. Don't give up, don't give in, don't get out, make some trouble, make some good trouble. And if people just wonder, are you crazy? What's on your mind? You'd be surprised how they're willing to compromise just to get rid of your issue if you have any understanding of their issues to start opposed to your objective. So you will come up as a young person, Brother Davis, with ideas that we don't have access to now, because more and more people are beginning to understand sooner or later that this country would need us and the unification and the solidarity of Americans if we're going to maintain our position in world power.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Brother Biggie.
No, I'll be really quick. I was going to add, I think that Brother Rangel, he just nailed it on the head, and that is find out what's important to them and use that as balance, right? And in some cases, it kind of is the old saying of power to the people, because what might be important to them is capitalizing on their fear that they want to come across as a public official or someone who is against us, right? So you leverage that so that so that's their fear, the fear of being reelected, fear of their persona, fear of their contributions going down because of what's perceived or what their reality is, frankly, of how they're trying to block good work of the people. Brother Mayor Ross, the Community Review Board that he's put together, that's the blueprint. In Maplewood, we looked at that, we read that, we know about some of the stuff that's happening in litigation, and we create our own version, but we use the mayor's blueprint. And we've had conversations, with our good friends at the county level about how we can be more thoughtful about when we find people that fall out of our SOPs in the police perspective, and we say this is criminal-like, and we kick it over to the prosecutor's office, and they review it, and they kick it back and say, we don't think so, and they leave us in that limbo. How difficult that is when you're trying to not only maintain a police force that is aligned with your values, but also make sure that the people that live in your community that are color feel like they're on a level playing field. How do you handle that? So anyway, I'll stop there. I know we have more questions. Just wanted to say a few things.
Thank you so much, good brother. I have a bit of a loaded question because it's actually simple, but there's a lot in it. And so I'm going to be brief so we can spend some time breaking it down. The small question, the short question in particular to the mayors is, how do you feel about these conversations around defunding police? You are mayors. How do you feel about defunding police? And then the sort of underlying questions there is that, there's been much talk about rising crime rates in our cities, the need to keep Black and brown people safe. But there's also this, conversations that are often labeled as coming from the progressive community about defund, and then others within our community, within the African-American community, would say, well, we're not really for that defund thing. We still need to keep our streets safe. Can these two things coexist? And the question then is, if there is an agenda that is not quite one or the other, how do we maintain control of it?
Basil, I know less about this than my colleagues on this panel. But when someone gets a hold of a saying like some progressive has, that sounds more progressive than let's reallocate the funds, and others say defund them, and then someone say eliminate them, sometimes the one that sounds the most radical for purposes of election will get the attention. Nobody in their right mind is going to say, don't adequately fund sound, honest police power. Now, the time to answer that question is when nobody's running for office.
Right.
But it cannot get an honest answer unless someone has the opportunity to explain what they mean, because ultimately nobody wants to scream for help and they find out that the police department is closed.
Well, I think that, so I just think it's a matter of definition and how we define what this is and what that means and what our imagination allows us to see. Like in Newark, we're trying to reimagine. See, public safety is not the sole job of the police. Public safety is the job of all of the institutions in the community. In places like Newark, if I go to a community meeting, people will say, well, I haven't seen the police in my neighborhood. And so it's a bad thing. They want to see the police in their neighborhood. If there's no police in the presence, then they feel like they're not safe. If I'm in a suburban community, if the police are on somebody's block, people want to know, why are the police there? Police to them means there's trouble, right? Cops came, something happened, right? And because they understand that the cops respond to people who violated the law. They enforce the law. They have not by themselves. They're not responsible for the safety of the public, right? There are a whole bunch of other things that come into play there. Institutions, family, employment, school, all of that creates the persona of public safety. In places like Newark, we believe because we don't have all of those other pieces, that the cops are solely responsible for public safety. And that's wrong. And which is why we have these conflicts with the police, besides the fact that racism and white supremacy exist in the police department, but we're using the police to solve problems that they are not designed to solve, right? And so when you say defund, in my mind, it means reimagination and using funding from police sources to expand the idea of public safety. So we have in Newark, the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, which helps reduce violence and crime in areas that have high violence and crime, alongside of the police department. This will be the first time in the history of the city that when we graduate from the police officers from the academy, we're also graduating social workers on the same stage as police officers. So I think that it is our job to define what that means and not let the press and other people define for us what we mean by public safety and defund. Because I think the congressman is right on the money. Nobody in their right mind and nobody that's running for anything will ever get elected telling people that we're not going to have police at all. But the reimagination of what that looks like, I think everybody's on board with that.
I would agree with Brother Mayor Baraka. I think, when you hear that word defunding, how it's interpreted in the media and how you define it. And also funding is also a key word in itself. Take the D out of it. Don't look at it from a finite perspective. You have to look at what you are funding in your police department. Are you funding training? Are you funding, equipment? Are you funding technology? What are you funding to operate a police department? The brother mayor touched on a good point about social workers. We just allocated money in this year's municipal budget to hire 2 social workers. Now, our police department, our force, our table is 63 police officers. So 2, that's a significant percentage and a cost associated with it. But why? It's because we also see that our police department, even in the suburb, and it's a good point, it should not just be a finite definition of they're coming because there's problems, but they have to go back to the term, which has become a little bit cliche, because community policing. Getting out of your cars and having conversations. We had an incident in 2016 in this town where young people that look like all of us on this call were literally marched out of town from the high school all the way to Irvington. And at the time, the leadership of the police department said that these young Black men and women, young boys and girls, don't belong here. The town was on fire about that, and we made some significant decisions to pivot leadership in our whole police department. But this also goes back to what I said earlier about making sure you have representation in office and other appointed positions as well, because as we started to hire new police officers in our table, as people retired and moved on or so forth, who we've hired are more indicative to understanding the culture that we're trying to establish. They also look more like you and I, or they're women or other people of color. But going through a more scrutination of how, not just testing, but just how they understand what our community is and what we're trying to do. But defunding, I agree. I've publicly come out and said, no, I'm not with defunding the police. I'm with reimagining how we leverage the funding allocated to enhance our police department. And that's a key point. So thank you.
Thank you for that, brothers. So with that, I was charged with putting the last question, but also we have to transition into closing statements because my father put me in charge of this panel to make sure, in part, we stayed on time. So if we don't stay on time, I don't know how I'm going to look at him tomorrow morning at breakfast. So a lot of our brother Smikle can attest to this. A lot of our questions are sort of loaded, meaty, I should say, not loaded. They're meaty and prime for discussion. But I realized maybe to end, I gotta sort of ad-lib something. So Brother Mayor McGehee, when you were talking, you were giving us sort of in your intro statement, you were giving us a list of certain spheres in which we can look into Black life and judge our achievement on like how far we've come. Brother Baraka, what you actually said to me is that this generation right now is poised to deal with our problems better than any generation so far. And Congressman Rangel, with your outlook and your experience from, you know, your over 90 years of life, I want you guys to answer this for me. We've talked about some of the bad and some of the negatives, but what are you excited for when it comes to the state of Black cities? And please, I'm sorry, but let's be mindful of our next panel coming up. So let's keep this brief but insightful. I know you guys can do it because you've already done such a great job.
I can do it. Being alive, that's what I'm happy about. So I pass.
I love
I
it.
pass.
Amen to that.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I'm excited about all of the opportunity that young people bring to the table. Just the energy, the access, the information that young people have. It's just exciting about what I think is going to happen, and just the courageousness, even the terms that we're talking about, defund and all of that they're coming up with, just shows that people are just not going to lay down and let things remain the same. I'm excited about what the future bears for a lot of us. And I think some of the things we've been waiting to see for generations and decades, some of those things will come into fruition, and maybe I'll get a chance to see a little bit of it before I have to sign out of this place. So, I'm excited about that.
I'm excited about providing the opportunity for whoever's going to be sitting in my chair next, and laying the tracks and making sure that I reach back and put them and throw them over me. I'm really excited about, really paving a path for others to come through me and keep moving us forward. A lot of times I think there's an opportunity to do that. And if we all just commit to like helping each other out, brothers and sisters, in any capacity, then wow, what a difference. And like, I get so excited about the little things, from job opportunities to committees to writing letters of recommendation, knowing that I'm helping another young person or a person in general of color fulfill their dreams, paying it forward, reaching back all the way. I'm excited about being a pillar for us.
Great.
And I'm excited about Alpha Lambda, brother.
Here.
Yes.
So, with that, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my run of show. Brother Smikle, you have anything to say? This is actually our turn, believe it or not. I'll go real quickly. Well, I want to thank everybody who's here. I want to thank the panelists so much. It's been a blessing beyond blessings. I'm not sure if you remember Congressman Rangel, but I actually met you. Let's see, this is about 7 years ago. My mayor took me down to the Congressional Black Caucus, and I was able to meet so many wonderful Black people in public service, and you were one of them. And it's amazing, you look just the same as you did 7 years ago. So it's great seeing you act just the same as you did 7 years ago. If anything, you might even be more full of life. You might be more spry. So congratulations on that.
Keep up the good work, young Davis. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. To brothers McGehee and brother Baraka, thank you so much for what you do for this chapter. Thank you so much for what you do with this community, and thanks for not finding it robbery to take a few minutes out of your time to come and discuss with me, the people in attendance, and brother Smikle, sort of the state of Black America. Just like you guys, I'm pretty excited because it goes back to this quote that Congressman Rangel said. It's, if you have a bad hand and you're going to throw it in, you can't win. And that's sort of where I feel like where we are as not only just Black America, but as a country. We're people, especially my age, but people of all ages are awakening to this idea that, especially in COVID, like, we make the rules, right? It's like, well, why do we have to go to work for only $7.15 or $7.25? Like, why do we have to work in a building 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're slowly realizing, or why should we accept it that the police brutalize us? We're slowly starting to realize we don't have to do that. So I'm really excited. We're playing with a bad hand anyway, and we're broke, so might as well go all in. Ain't that right? Brother Smikle, you have anything?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I'm going to turn this over to Brother President Oladapo and the best vice president, the best father, my dad, for to get us on to the next panel, which should be really, really amazing because it's about the future of Black leadership. So everybody who was so excited on this panel about the future, well, stay on because in a couple of minutes they'll be talking about the future.
Well, thank you, brothers, for your amazing presentations. Brother Rangel, you are a hero to all of us. Brothers Baraka and McGehee, thank you. And then Freddy, amazing job moderating, and Brother Smikle, amazing job as well. I'll turn it over to Brother Davis to get us into our next session.
Thank you, Brother President. And again, Brother President Oladapo and Brother Freddie Davis said it all. Thank you so much, panelists, for being on, for giving us a lot. And I know you have a lot more to give us, so we're eventually going to get you back one of these days. Now, for those on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, we will transition, so stay on. Brother Nichols, just give us the word how we will transition right now. We'll be back in probably about 2 minutes. Brother Nichols.
So long, I got mixed up here.
Brother Rangel, yes.
But take care and thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you. We're going to be celebrating with you on Friday, 91.
Good. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
All right, brothers. So here's the transition. We're going to go to the next panel. Great job, brothers. Really appreciate you. So the brothers who are on the panel 2, put your cameras on. Brother Smikle, thank you.
Thanks. Sorry I had to run. That's the problem.
Phenomenal.
In the Zoom environment, when the doorbell rings, you gotta go.
Brothers, thank you. I appreciate you. I actually got to run to a public safety meeting.
Thanks.
So,
Take
all right,
care,
Brother
brothers.
McGehee, that's right.
Thank you.
all right.
Appreciate you. We'll talk. See you on Friday.
On Friday.
That's your Brother Campana, Brother Jones. I'll set you brothers up. Rock and roll. So we are back for our panel number 2, which is the future Black leadership and the Black agenda. Before we start, I do want to say one of our fraternities, of course, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, national program is a voteless people is a hopeless people. And so on that note, let me introduce our co-moderators. The first co-moderator is David Campana. He is the current committee chair of the Voteless People is the Hopeless People Committee. Professionally, Brother Campana is the vice president and digital strategy lead for Investors Bank, where he leads the organizational strategy for all online digital customer technologies. As a 25-year professional and executive, Brother Campana has worked for various industries, including investment banking, telecommunications, financial services, pharmaceuticals, and music. He's a father of 4 sons and enjoys reading, playing golf, and staying home. Brother Campana, welcome.
Thank you.
Our other co-moderator is Brother Aaron Jones, and he's a graduate of Rutgers University, Newark, with a master's in criminal justice. He serves as committee chair for both the Middlesex County College's DEI Advisory Council and Rutgers University, Newark School of Criminal Justice DEI Committee. He is the chapter's co-chair of the Social Action Committee, and he's also the current Social Action Chair for the New Jersey Association of Alpha Phi Alpha chapters. Brother Jones currently is an analyst with Goldman Sachs. Welcome, Brother Jones. Brother Jones and Brother Campana, the floor is yours.
Perfect. I'm going to first let everybody know if you have any questions, please fill them in Facebook Live or YouTube. We will try our best to answer them at the end of the discussion. But I would like to tell you what we're talking about. So one of the hallmarks of the Black community is our charismatic, passionate, and dynamic leaders, from Harriet Tubman to Frederick Douglass to Barack Obama. Some may say we have moved from an era of clearly defined Black leadership, like Brother Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Brother Whitney Young Jr., Malcolm X, Medgar Evers. And while we can argue the tactical advantage of this or the trauma of losing our leaders to violence, our world has changed. And our current era is defined by a myriad of opinions and activism, all of which one can easily determine to be valid or invalid. In the journey to uplift and empower our community, the Black community. This discussion today is our method to find a consensus through collaboration. And if I can be frank, I am very excited for this discussion. Our panelists are Black leaders who I believe represent and fight for ideals to promote the best for the entire African diaspora. Today, in this moment, we are going to have a meaningful and fruitful discussion on our current Black leaders and the Black agenda through the lens of what we must do next. And I'd definitely like to pass the mic to Brother Campana. Please go.
Thank you, Brother Jones. This is a really, really unique time for us. We're going through a pandemic. It was a fairly traumatic 4 years. Everything between George Floyd. The world seems like it's going out of control, and you want to sometimes be pessimistic about things, but every day is a new day, and we turn the page. We've made history where we have a sister, a Black woman as the Vice President of the United States. There is hope. We've had a Black president. There is hope. But that hope actually starts here. It starts here in the local communities, where we now have to start thinking about who are going to be the next Barack Obamas, who's going to be the next Ras Baraka, who's going to be the next Cory Booker, who's going to be the next Kamala Harris. What we need to start thinking about is building the next generation of leaders. What is our agenda for the next 100 years? Since we already started with a deficit of 400, how can we now continue to build on this momentum? That's what we want to talk about tonight. Let's see what we're going to do as a community to build our community, to build our country. With that, we have 4 very dynamic gentlemen, brothers of Alpha. They're going to share their insights, talk about where they see Black leadership and where they see the Black agenda going. And Brother Jones, if you don't mind, I'll start with the first 2 introductions and then you'll go to the other 2. Great. Let me first introduce Brother Michael Blake. Brother Blake is the founder and CEO of Atlantis Strategy Group, which focuses on economic empowerment through increasing access to capital, contracting and opportunities to minority, women, and small businesses, along with creating a metrics-based program for social justice and civic engagement for communities of color. Blake has worked with the Washington football team, Next Level Sports and Entertainment, Echelon, MWW, the National Demographic Training Committee, Aquasight, Operation Hope, focusing on financial literacy for individuals and businesses, and Green for All as its national policy director. Brother Blake, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, brother Campana. I appreciate you, and good to see the brothers 06.
No problem. I have another brother. Brother Larry Scott Blackmon is an extremely active and individual member of the community. Professionally, Larry, or LSB as he likes to be known, is the CEO of Blackmon Organization, a full-service government affairs, public relations, lobbying, and entertainment firm. Larry represents clients who wish to know New York City's influencers, power brokers, and community leaders. Prior to starting his firm, Larry served as the Vice President of Public Affairs at Fresh Direct, the leading e-commerce grocer of the Northeast. Brother Blackmon, thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you, and it's great to be around my brothers. Thank you, Brother Campana. And thank you to the brothers of Alpha Alpha Lambda for having me.
Thank you. Brother Jones?
Perfect. So the first brother that I'm going to introduce is extremely dynamic, Brother Pascal Robert. He is an essayist and a political commentator whose work covers Black politics, global affairs, and Haitian politics, something that's very close to my heart. His work has appeared in the Washington Spectator, Black Commentator, Alternet, allhiphop.com, and the Huffington Post. He's a regular contributor to the online publication, The Black Agenda Report, and is a current co-host of the This Is Revolution podcast, which is live streamed via YouTube and relevant social media on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Saturdays at noon. Brother Robert, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, my brothers. Very, very happy to be on this panel with the brothers of Alpha.
And up next, we have Will Davis. He is a 2020 alumni of Hofstra University who double majored in journalism and political science. In the year after his graduation, he also helped start Liberation Elevation Education Book Club Incorporated with 2 other Hofstra alumni. The focus of this 501c3 is striving to promote knowledge through Black literature and Black and brown communities. Thank you so much for your time, Will.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, brothers.
So to start this off, oh, sorry about that. So to start this off, definitely just want to ask the question, who are our current Black leaders? And yep, go for it.
Again, thank you, brothers, for having me on the panel. I'd like to answer that question actually with a quote from Martin Luther King from 1967 from a speech called "The Black Power Defined." The majority of Negro political leaders do not ascend to prominence on the shoulders of mass support. Although generally popular leaders are now emerging, most are still selected by white leadership and elevated to positions, supplied with resources, and inevitably subjected to white control.
the mass of Negroes nurtures a healthy suspicion towards this manufactured leader, who spends little time in persuading them that he embodies personal integrity, commitment, and ability, and offers few programs and less service. Tragically, he is in too many respects a fighter for not a fighter for a new life, but a figurehead of the old one. This is Martin Luther King in 1967. That speech was basically given at a time in which 300 urban cities were going to be burnt down to a crisp between 1967 and 71 during the urban rebellions that transformed the political reality of life for Black America. What came to pass after that, after the Black Power era elevated the Black Panther Party, the Republic of New Africa, and many other radical movements into the consciousness of the Black community, is that in the Gary, Indiana Convention of 1972, there was a schism between traditional old guard established Black politicos and the radicals who came from the movement era of Black Power as to the direction of where Black political leadership in the Black community should go. Because they had better access to resources and better connection to the ruling class, the traditional Black political class, like our brother Charlie Rangel, like the founders of the Congressional Black Caucus, like the many mayors that took over cities and municipalities all over the country, won that debate and became what we know at Black Agenda Report and those who are scholars of Black politics from a left perspective as the Black political class. The Black political class has been the steward of the affairs of Black America and majority Black municipalities over 50 years. What has been the consequence of their stewardship? Black homeownership rates are the same now as they were in 1968. Mass incarceration of poor and working class Blacks has gone up. And at one time, during the Obama presidency, Black child poverty was as high as it's been since 1971. My argument is the problem with Black leadership is the fact that we believe we need a Black leader, because the Black leadership paradigm comes out of the old guard Booker T. Washington model, and he was a man who was elevated by the ruling class in the South to neutralize the Colored Farmers Alliance, which was an alliance of working class Black men aligning with working class white sharecroppers to challenge Southern capital and actually economically empower themselves to displace the rule of the Southern Bourbon society. That race management paradigm, as Michael West calls in his book, The Education of Booker T. Washington, is the exact paradigm that the Black leader is dispatched to do. He manages the affairs of the Black 42 million who stay in silence, as he basically implements the ruling class agenda from above and below at the behest and the benefit of the ruling class, not the Black majority. So if you ask me who the Black leaders are of tomorrow, none of them who come in your face and tell you that they are a Black leader should be trusted. And that's the first person you should say, I don't want to talk to you, because I know where the Black leadership hold takes us and where it's taken us in 50 years. What we need is that poor and working class Black people who have been most betrayed by brothers like ourselves, who are the top 1 in 10%, who make up 75% of Black wealth, while the majority of Blacks are twice as poor as whites. And we live in our nice little comfortable middle-class homes, go to Martha's Vineyard every summer, while Black kids get shot in the face regularly and beat down by cops, and pretend to have racial kinship with these people.
Well, I'm going to jump in here because I feel like
I'm not finished yet.
I know, but brother Robert, you gotta let other brothers speak. We're already at 21 minutes.
Okay. Brother Robert, I definitely agree with Brother Blackmon on this one. We'll go around, definitely come back to you.
Let me be clear. I'm one of those.
Oh, Brother Blackmon, definitely.
Yeah. Brother Jones, can you hear me okay? You're breaking up on my end. I don't know if it's my end or your end. Can other brothers hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good, Brother Blackman. Brother Jones is
okay. Thank you. So let me just say this.
That's me.
Okay. Let me just say this. I'm one of these Negroes that goes to Martha's Vineyard. And I'm one of these Negroes that grew up in public housing. And I'm one of these Negroes that go back to public housing. My niece lives in public housing. And I think one of the things that we are all leaders. We're all leaders. Wilbert Davis is a leader. Why? Because if he drew a 1 mile radius with a compass from where he is, I'm sure that there aren't many brothers like Wilbur Davis around him. So it's incumbent upon him to help to change that neighborhood, right? So as one of those people who goes to Martha's Vineyard, as one of those people that walk the street when kids get shot, when they get beat, when they don't know who else to call, they pick up the phone and call me. As a brother, that when our brothers in this illustrious fraternity have a problem when they do an event and it's not permitted and the police roll up, the leaders show up and say, leave them alone.
Let me ask you, Brother Blackman.
Right?
Let me make this question.
Oh, let me finish. My brother, I didn't interrupt you. Let me finish.
Good.
We are all leaders. That senior citizen who can't get Con Ed to respond and calls Michael Blake means that Michael Blake is somebody that will change that one senior citizen's life. So we need to stop looking at leadership from an economic standpoint perspective. Because my grandparents, who couldn't read or write past the 4th grade level, did well enough to see that I could. And because I worked and had people that helped me along the way, doesn't make me a villain of the progressive class or of those who had other struggles. I'm going to stop there.
Can I address the point, please?
My point wasn't directed at you, brother, but feel free.
How many Black political leaders do you think contributed to the worsening your condition living in that public housing when you were growing up?
I think it was built by a white system, a system that was controlled by Caucasians, that built a system and built substandard housing and moved in an area where there wasn't political power. And if you take a look at the design of New York City and you see the way our neighborhoods were drawn, they were drawn in areas where we didn't have Black political power, even when there were Black elected officials there. And I want to hear from Michael Blake on this.
Yes, I was going to say, can we have Michael Blake? Because I definitely want to get your
I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, I've been hi brothers. I've been sitting here listening right now. Well, when I started this work in politics, I'm going to address both of these questions. The core question that you started were, who are the leaders of Black leaders? That question right there. We all are leaders, let's start there, who do different things. I chose the path of politics because I believe that there is no industry that can help more people at scale than policy. From the moment you're born to the moment you die, everything has some impact because of policy. So to the question around housing or jobs or criminal justice, at the end of the day, I think it would make sense for us to have more people in the arena of politics than less. In terms of the question around leaders, don't let your disappointment caused by a few to distract you of the impact of the greater majority. And we have been hurt for so long among our community, we start to tell ourselves, well, these leaders, quote unquote, let us down and failed us. Probably it was the systems that failed you. To Brother Blackman's point. And I think it's important that we remember, brothers, there is a difference between prejudice and racism. Prejudice is something that all of us have in different ways where you can be discriminatory. Racism is when you institutionalize it in your system. And so when we talk about who lets you down and who can frustrate you, we need more leaders who will make change at scale. That's your question, because you were asking initially around Black leadership and who are our leaders. So if you are a Black leader trying to change the game when it comes to business, I'm going to rock with you like Brother Hill Harper is doing with Black Wall Street. If you are a leader that's trying to change the game when it comes to what's going on in sports, like my line brother Jason Wright with the Washington football team, I'm going to rock with you. You are a leader. If you want to change the game when it comes to what's happening in the spaces of equity, like Brother Robert Smith, whose line brother is Brother Louis Tobias, I'm going to rock with you. Maybe it's in politics and what I'm doing. Maybe it's what's happening in business and in politics, Larry Scott Blackman. But all of us have a form on that. But I will say this, and I'll stop here. Let us not get trapped with questions about who are our leaders, because it creates a false narrative. because it essentially starts making us say, well, one person is a leader versus who's not a leader. And it makes us start thinking about the people that are on camera all the time. You don't have to be on camera to be a leader. There's a lot of folks making things happen that you may not see. I say this all the time with the Democratic Party. I make the analogy around what the Golden State Warriors were a few years ago. They obviously won a lot of championships, but you didn't know who might have been the people that were the general manager and assistant general manager behind the scenes. And that person is just as critical than the person that was rocking on the court. So that's where we need to go as a people and focus on this moment that we're in. Rather than us getting distracted and trying to, have division, we are in a reparations moment, brothers and guests. We're in a moment right now where there are hundreds of millions of dollars going to our cities. And instead of us talking about everybody disrespecting us for the centuries before, I'd rather focus on what we're going to do in 2021.
I need to respond to this.
Oh, before that, we do need to let Will go.
Brother Jones and Brother Campana can keep us going.
Yeah.
If I could jump in real quick, and thank you for the question, Brother Jones. And I think right now, when we look at the mainstream media and America as a society today, there are people who are deemed Black leaders who so-called represent us with what I say with mainstream media contracts, some who are wealthy entertainers or business people. You had mentioned one, Brother Blake, and some who hold political office, who work at, as Brother Pascal said, at the behest of the ruling class to push a capitalist agenda that does not benefit the majority of Black people and the majority of the American people. And the reason I think there is a huge problem with having a select people who are deemed Black leaders, because we rely on them to handle the discourse and speak on behalf of the race, when in reality, those folks have more unity with the 1% who hold the majority of wealth in America rather than the poor and working class who make up the majority of the race. A pure example is during this pandemic, while billionaires continue to increase their wealth and the lower bottom percentage, 99% of us, continue to lose our wealth, lose our houses that are getting foreclosed on, or will start getting foreclosed on after the CDC, who gets to determine this, deems it worthy now to foreclose, that have lost their jobs and are now getting killed on the street. We see Black political leaders talk more about things that don't matter, like the arts, like painting the streets yellow and saying Black Lives Matter on there and calling that progress. So I think there is a problem with Black leadership. I think we should have that discussion, and that's how we get to having a productive discussion on the future of Black leadership and what that looks like in America.
I'd like to, can I address comments that were made, please?
Yes, please, Brother Robert.
Brother Blake, by the way, let me be just clear, brothers. Brother Blake and Brother Blackman, Fred Davis made me in 1987. I've been in this fraternity for almost 35 years. Brothers know me. I'm a very contentious brother. I'm a very passionate brother, but none of this is personal for me. Believe me. Brothers who pledge me, I call them fatback and biscuits, Martha's Vineyard Negroes to their face. And Fred can attest to that. So I don't want you to feel that I'm antagonistic.
I'm not mad at that. I love fatback, so we can keep it.
I wanted to say, Brother Blake, I wanted to say something in response to what you said. You gave 3 examples of what you call quote unquote Black leaders who are doing things in the Black community. All 3 of those examples were Black 1%ers who are going to implement policy that's going to help people who are Black 1%ers. And the problem with the political agenda of the quote unquote Black community, and I think the problem is that we believe we are one community when we are communities of different classes and different backgrounds, is that the agenda is set by a class of Black people who set an agenda that benefits their class. The fact that we think that Barack Obama, who literally sat back and watched 35% of Black wealth get evaporated while he was basically put in place by Robert Rubin, a Citibank executive, and basically made sure that the 1% was taken care of after they eviscerated this country with the subprime mortgage crisis, or Kamala Harris, who was Miss Capo Harris, who made sure that her job was taking care of Black and brown families and children in San Francisco was done to the best of her ability, is what we should look for in Black leaders. I hearken back to that Martin Luther King quote about being propped up by what established it and not promoting any new vision, but being a caretaker of the old one. So Dr. King, as the prophetic voice he was, saw what was coming in 1967, and he was doing it at a time where Black elected officials were already starting to take the helm. Now, I'm not saying that you brothers should be the enemies, though I do believe some Black on Black class warfare would be quite good. I'll bring the machetes if you like. But the point is that the larger point I'm trying to say is that there is a class, Black politics is a class politics. And the class that controls it is not the class of the majority of Black people who are poor and working class. Let those people let those people work with people who are similarly situated, who are not controlled by the veil of racism and can pierce it, and demand a political agenda that suits their needs. A federal jobs guarantee, a New Deal 2.0, better union jobs, $15 minimum wage. Root their politics in their material condition and not in this charade of Blackness that has got us all in this trap where we're literally fighting fascism on the rise.
So let's pivot. So let's pivot. Hold on for a second.
Let's transition to the next question. I'm sure we can.
I was going to say, but I also think that this is a good place to pivot. The agenda. So we could agree or disagree on Black leadership, but I think we all could agree there needs to be an agenda. Yes, there needs to be a leader, and we could disagree on that, but there needs to be an agenda. And to your point, Brother Robert, there could be different agendas based on the class that you're in. So let's talk about that, because that is a fundamental problem as well that needs to be addressed. And how do we break those barriers? And what have other races done to break those, that class system, that the thing that's really separating us, although we should be united? Let's talk about that, because that's where there's where our opportunities are to grow and move.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your generosity. I just want to say I can see the warmth in your spirit, Brother Campana, and I celebrate that. And by the way, I have love and affection for all the brothers. Larry, you're my man. Your father's music took me through the 80s. I just wanted you to know. So this I don't want brothers to feel that there's any. I'm a very passionate.
No, listen, brother.
Absolutely. We don't, but we're ready to answer. We don't, but we're ready to rock here.
Let me tell you, this panel is much easier than it was growing up in the 80s when you had a famous father. Trust me.
I hear you.
Imagine.
I will respectfully and vehemently disagree on the point that was made earlier about the previous brothers are only helping the top 1%. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. But let me go to your question here. We got to, again, help at scale, right? So like, if a brother takes on a role that could lead to anywhere between $1 to $2 billion being deployed to minority women-owned businesses in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and primarily Black businesses that have been left behind, that changes the game. And it's not just Black men, it's all of us. When Misha Ross Porter becomes the chancellor of DOE, so that we can actually figure out how we're going to help our kids actually go to school, graduate school, that changes the game. I think, again, we have been hurt for so long that we have spent the first 30 minutes talking about leadership disappointments. I'd rather talk about how we elevate our people. And very practically, when we're talking about politics, I am going to talk about politics very directly because that's what I know best here, right? Like, we have an election coming up in 13 days that is in New York City. That is the most transformative opportunity we've had in the city literally ever, because of how many people will be changing positions. Mayor, comptroller, in which the comptroller has $250 billion of pension assets that they oversee, 35 city council races, 4 out of 5 borough president races, the district attorney's race, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to be real clear. Why am I talking about that? Because I don't understand, why are we spending the time trying to negatively talk about leadership that we should be figuring out how we elect, support, and elevate so that they can help us as a people at scale. That's the reason why you put leaders in. You literally support leaders so they can help the masses, right? Like, so
how much help did Obama give to the masses?
The broader point, like the premise of this, and then I'll say this final piece and then transition over to Larry Scott Blackmon and Brother Davis. As you could probably pick up from my cadence, I also preach. And so we can't be selective when we're talking about leadership. So as a Christian, we have so many examples of following leaders. We don't just randomly say, I'm just hoping it's going to figure this out. Like Jesus, who was a dark man, skin of color, a refugee who was homeless, who experienced poverty, wasn't just that because he just spit some rhymes, right? He was that because he was seen as a leader that mobilized people, right? Like Paul and Timothy didn't just randomly become that. They were leaders that mobilized at scale. We're not talking about Moses for some transformational way just because they just showed up. And so there is an intersectionality between leadership and impact at people at scale. So when you ask the question about what are we trying to do here and how do you change things and what is the agenda, we need to focus on the economic development that has to happen for us as a people. It is the reason why poverty is the topic that is discussed the most in the Bible. Check that anywhere that wants to source that. It is the reason why you got to talk about education K through 16, because just going by 12 is not sufficient. And it can't just be about four-year institutions. You got to look at community colleges, vocational schools. It's the reason why we got to change the systems. And I understand that we have been hurt by white privilege and racism and discrimination for centuries. But I am asking us, I am pleading us to stop spending the time trying to talk about why Black folk are not doing things for Black folk and actually help Black folk to empower Black folk.
How much are we willing to recognize that Black folk are often the agents of the destruction of Black folk while they're getting promoted in the system?
And what I will say in my 15-second response is I love and respect my brothers of Alpha. But there are some times when our brothers of Alpha are so fundamentally wrong on the points that they're saying that it is best to just transition to the next speaker.
And I'm going to jump in there because as someone who's been a career servant, I could not think of anything else that was more completely, absurdly incorrect.
What that you don't think that Black collaboration is necessary to facilitate the phenomenon of white supremacy?
That was actually not your question. As a former journalist, let's be clear, that is actually not what you said. Right? But you were asking,
that's not what you said.
Brother Jones, we can keep going right there.
Now, here, let me just say this. I'm going to say a couple of things. We can't, or at least some of us don't, cherry pick what is apropos for our argument. Because on the one hand, if you're going to stick to Martin Luther King's quote about Black leaders or certain Black leaders being put in certain places by whites, then you can't also negate one of his most famous speeches right before he died, where he talked about the fact that white landowners, white farmers were giving land grants by a racist Congress that was used to prop them up. They use that to build generational wealth. And then when Black people get to the point where we are just about to seek out a piece of the pie, we are told that we have to do it by ourselves. We are given a different message. If you take a look at the history of Black people in this country, we could not move to certain neighborhoods. We could not access it. We couldn't swim in the same pool. Cases where Black people swam in the same pool went to the United States Supreme Court. If you take a look at the history of housing in New York City, take a look at where even the George Washington Bridge is placed or the Cross Bronx Expressway, and you see the history of racism. And it is only now that some of us are only hard on Black elected officials because some of us have a Black complex. The fact of the matter is that you align yourself with individuals, some of you align yourself with individuals that really couldn't care about even propping Black elected officials up because that does not serve their best interest. It's about power and the holding of power. So the point I am going to say, as someone who has dedicated their career, and Brother Pascal, Brother Robert, I can say this to you, you are absolutely and completely wrong. Brother Blake knows this. And some of us, the work that we are doing is transformational, not to aid at the destruction of the Black community, but to understand how the Black community's political power has been siphoned away from it. And we've been conditioned to hate each other, even politically.
Can I respond?
Brother Davis, Brother Wilbert Davis, and then Brother Pascal. Brother Davis, then Brother Pascal, please.
Just to answer your question, and first, I think with other groups, Brother Campana, I think it's a good question, but to address the first part of it, I think that other groups have similar problems that also the Black community is facing. I don't think they have solidarity with race. When you look at it, you see the upper wealthy ruling the lower bottom half of that race as well. But if we're going to talk about Dr. King's one of his last speeches, he talks about the three evils of society: racism, excessive materialism, and militarism. And when we talk about what should be on the Black agenda, there, I would say 5 points that I have here. Poverty is one, like I said earlier. U.S. billionaires during the pandemic, their wealth grew 19-fold over the last 31 years.
So what? That is their pocket. That's not yours.
I didn't interrupt you now. I didn't interrupt you, brother LSB. Come on.
I know, but I'm just saying, I'm tired of hearing about somebody else's pocket.
And I'll let the audience judge. And would you rather be defending billionaires or would you rather be defending
I'm not defending
the poor
billionaires.
You said so what?
I'm not. No. And what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is the context. The context of the fact of the matter is that while you are spending precious seconds talking about what someone else is doing, we are not coming up with solutions to empower our own.
So here's my solution with that. Here's my solution to that. I would say tax billionaires so billionaires don't exist. That would be my solution, and that would help the Black community more than empowering Black businesses, where you see that the majority of Black people do not benefit from that. Like Brother Pascal.
But can I just ask one thing to Brother Davis to that point? So
go ahead, brother.
I just want to make sure I grasp this here.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we want to create a scenario so that billionaires don't exist? Because when we are seeing that wealth consciously spent out can help people, like that would essentially. So let's go back to Brother Smith.
So we agree with that. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
We agree with that, right?
But
we agree.
But we don't. I just want to be clear, because you actually just said to create a system.
Wealth spent in whose hands? Wealth in whose hands?
Right.
The private sector or the state?
Oh, I mean, like when Brother Smith went down to Morehouse and told everyone that their tuition.
Was that before?
He also went to Trump.
Was that before or after he got busted being a facilitator for a tax scam?
For a tax scam, right?
I think the joy of what's happening here is there's pain, that I get it. Black folk
Brother, there's no pain here. This is basic balance.
Brother Robert.
No pain here.
Brother Robert,
I know we have shiesty Black politicians. This is not a shock to working class Black people.
So
I would like to interject here.
Just let me get this, because I've waited on this for a few moments. That's the fourth time I've heard you talk about shady politicians. And as a brother, it's really starting to unnerve me. I bust my ass to help people. And for those of us who literally give up our lives to help people, what you're referring to are maybe the 1% of people who make mistakes. But for those of us, like myself, who created the My Brother's Keeper program here in New York State, or when we worked on Raise the Age, or changed the law so that minority women businesses got paid in 15 days instead of 30 days. The rhetoric that is happening right now is the reason why people don't want to trust leaders, because we're talking through.
No, they don't want to trust Black leaders, and they shouldn't, because what they protect their own. Let's take it to the top. Let's take it to the top. No, I want to address this. Let's take this to the top. Let's talk about the epitome of Black political achievement in most people's mind, the President Barack Obama. Let's talk about the epitome.
Brother Robert, let's go in order. Brother Blake, finish your thought.
Thank you. Just let me finish my thought. So, because I heard the part about Obama, and then we can go back to the question. As someone who went to Iowa, as I did, to organize constituency outreach, to say that Barack Obama, who made sure that the Affordable Care Act, which presidents had tried for 70 years, couldn't get done, changed crack versus powder cocaine from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1, expanded funding for the HBCU initiative that didn't exist before, changed student loan funding so that if you did public service, you could have it eliminated 10 years. But again, let's not worry about all those things at scale that help Black people.
I want to address every single point. I got a response for everyone.
We don't need that, because again, the premise of this.
Why can't we have a discussion on the record of the...
Let him finish his thought, and then you have the floor. But Brother Blake has.
Brother Blake,
I do want to say that we'll
Blake,
not
one more
finish.
minute, and then Brother Robert, please.
I'm actually. I was trying to make the final 30-second here of the
Go ahead,
premise of
please.
this was the future of Black leadership. And the problem that we are having, brothers, is that we're spending so much time talking about what a small number of people did to disappoint us that we're not talking about how we're training the next generation of leaders. And if we keep doing this, we lose as a people. I would rather us spend the time talking about how are we developing the young ones that are coming up after us. How are we spending the time in New York and New Jersey realizing that there are Black and brown kids being shot and killed every single day? That when people are talking about crime being a #1 issue in polling, it's not just about crime, because at that point, the cops are showing up after the crime has happened. We are spending so much time. When I talk about pain, we're talking right now about how we've been disappointed, which I respect, I receive, and I acknowledge. But brothers of Alpha, the Jewels would be embarrassed by what is happening right now by us spending so much time talking about what has happened in the past. Let us focus in on how do we develop the next generation of leaders. And that's why I'm grateful that you invited us to this conversation today.
May I respond?
Yeah, Brother Robert, can you please close? And then we'll go to closing remarks afterwards.
My closing is this. Let us look at the example, since we're all present, about Black leaders. What was the result of the high point of political aspiration for Black America? The first Black president who literally, as was exposed by WikiLeaks, had his whole first-term cabinet picked by Citibank executive who was actually working in Citibank when he picked Obama's cabinet. The man's name was Michael Frobin. Barack Obama had been in the tank consulting with Robert Rubin, the most nefarious Treasury Secretary we've had in this country, who basically orchestrated the rules that got us to 2008 crash since at least 2006 before, because Froman, who went to law school with Obama, introduced him to Rubin's brother early on in his political career, even before he was a senator in Chicago. This man, Barack Obama, that we're supposed to quote unquote praise, was literally a black-faced Trojan horse for Wall Street and finance capital. If you want to take a look at a video of a piece I wrote called Barack Obama's Wall Street's Perfect Manchurian Candidate, when in 2006, before he even announced that he was running for president, he's giving a speech at the Hamilton Group in front of Robert Rubin saying, yes, we all agree with markets. You guys are wonderful. And he's talking in front of the guys who orchestrated the rules that caused the crash, that he bankrolled and gave, guess who got a lion's share of that bankroll? Citigroup. All right. So we can talk about the fact that Barack Obama changed the plus load scheme to help bankrupt historically Black colleges and universities. Ask the presidents of HBCUs, as one of my fraternity brothers who works with them, what they think about Obama. All right. We can talk about the fact that 35% of Black wealth was evaporated in the subprime mortgage crisis with no recourse by Obama, except a cruddy home referral program that did nothing for poor and working class Black people.
Did the crisis begin?
I'm not finished yet.
No, I'm asking a question. I have a question.
I'm not finished yet.
I have a question.
Brother Robert, let him ask his question. We need to move forward.
So I actually
future Black leadership, right? This is about
future Black leadership,
not about the past leadership.
So
future of Black leadership.
Brother Robert,
let me. I'm giving you my response. The future of Black.
I have a question that would, like, I think my question will go to this, and it will be for everybody for the closing remarks. So I think it will be best if I just ask it. So in your closing remarks, can you please address succession plans for Black leadership? And with the succession plan, how do we hold them accountable? We've had a lot of back and forth today about the future, the past, the bad, the good. I think that we can be straightforward in figuring out, what do you believe we need to do to hold our Black leaders, who are businessmen, political officials, accountable? So succession plans and accountability.
May I? Can we? And we're going to go in order. We're going to start with Brother Robert, then yes. Brother Blackmon, then Brother Blake, then Brother Davis. You're each going to have 2 minutes, and when I start waving, that's going to give you your 30 seconds. Okay.
Can we switch the order? I mean, we've been going in that order for quite some time.
No, it's fine.
Right, I'm fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Brother Robert be the first.
I think that the answer for the conditions of what Black people should do in terms of leadership is that it would be refreshing if Black people chose their leaders. And I think they should choose leaders that reflect the politics, that reflect their material interests. So that means that if you want to say that we're choosing XYX member of XYX caucus because he suggests material policies that address working class Black people's needs, is pro-union, is pro-federal jobs guarantee, is pro-increasing $15 minimum wage, is pro-health, national health care. If he's in favor of those things that will help poor and working class Black people, they should support him, and they should make coalition agenda so they can neutralize the need on one solo Black leader. Have material politics based on your material interests, not the color of your skin, and don't let your color of your skin back up supporting someone who will not do anything for you. That is what I would say is the future, what needs to be the future of Black leadership.
Thank you, Brother Robert. Brother Blackmon.
So this is my closing statement, correct?
That is correct. You have 2 minutes.
All right, fantastic. I want to thank the brothers of Alpha Alpha Lambda for this opportunity, for this lively discussion. I think you all are very, very, very intelligent because you knew what you were going to get when you put this panel together. So I don't like you for that. And I will have a conversation with your district director about proper sanctions being held against the chapter for this. Let me just say that, I'm disappointed, to be quite frank. I'm disappointed, but I understand that no house can be built with, homogeneous tools. So I know that there's diversity of thought, and I know that sometimes diversity of thought is needed. But I'm going to say this, that there's a difference between, there are brothers of Alpha that are out here fighting the fight every single day. There are brothers that we have that work in healthcare that are out here trying to save lives of everyone, Black, brown, white, or indifferent. Some of those brothers were inspired probably by seeing a Black man assume the mantle of President of the United States when they didn't see that for their entire lives. I saw my grandparents cry when Barack Obama was elected. My grandparents, again, my grandfather couldn't read or write past the 3rd grade education. I saw that man break down when Barack Obama was president, and he died. I get it. We're going to go over tonight, though. Just by a little bit, you know what I mean? I'm fighting some things. I deserve some time.
Get it out, brother. Get it out.
So what I'm saying is that for the Michael Blakes of the world, for the Dr. Torian Easterlings of the world, for some of the Clement Jameses of the world who work to get thousands of people vaccinated, and then there's some brothers that don't do anything but pontificate and talk and spew ideology. It is an insult to some of us to be attacked for ideological differences. The kids on this corner on my block that shoot at each other don't care about Black politicians. They don't vote. Their issues are deeper, and they ain't blaming Black politicians. So if y'all want to come out and have a conversation with them, they're not on this level, right? So we need to think about that. But guess what they see? They see Barack Obama and they say, damn, we can do that. Because that's their level, is a visual level. Now, you may disagree with that, but I challenge any of you to come take off your ties and walk these streets with me. You'll get a different perspective on your politics. It's not income-based, it's reality-based. So what I'm going to say is, to the guests out there that view this, thank you. Not every public servant is negative or a crook or a thief. Not all of us believe that we should take money from billionaires and redistribute it. There's some of us that have more moderate views, but the passion on both sides of politics in the world today, unfortunately, has created more division than it has bringing together for the benefit of our community. And I thank you for my time.
Thank you, Brother Blackmon. Brother Blake.
To my dear brothers of Alpha Alpha Lambda, thank you for the opportunity. and for the space to be with you as we talk about the future of Black leadership. Look, I'll go back and to my fellow panelists and, of course, to the moderators. Great job. And I hope you pour yourself a glass of bourbon after this here. We're in a generational moment, and we need to stay focused on that. We are in the 100th anniversary of Greenwood, what happened in Tulsa. And if we don't realize the opportunity that we have in these cities and states, we're missing it. So number one, identify at least 1 to 2 young cats that you will say, I'm going to consistently mentor them. Because again, to the theme of this conversation, future Black leadership, consistently mentor that young cat along the way. Number 2, find that issue at scale that you want to change. You know, for me, it's economic justice, and I do that through politics. Right? Because again, if we're serious about the future Black leadership, we got to do that. And then third and finally, I would hope as the politician here who had the honor of working in the White House with President Obama, who had the honor of being elected official, who had the honor of being the first Black man to be a national officer for the DNC since Ron Brown. Lives are changed for the better when you elect the right people. And so when you talk about the future of Black leadership, I am going to use this moment to say, regardless of what's happening in the respective cities, and this is my final point, brother. We have 3 Black candidates running for mayor of New York City. There is no reason at all we do not end this thing with a Black mayor. You want to talk about the future of Black leadership? You want to change things at scale? You have a Black man in Brian Benjamin running for comptroller who could oversee $250 billion pension. There is no reason why Brian Benjamin does not win this race. You want to change things at scale? To your topic, have the right leaders, and especially in politics, be in those positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Blake. Brother Wilbur Davis, please close us.
Thank you, Brother Campana. First off, I like to say I wish we would have had a more productive conversation. I think these are the type of things that need to be discussed. And I think brothers on all sides shouldn't take things as personal as they did. But when we talk about mentoring, find that one person, find that 2 mentoring. And I know LSB, you mentioned people on the streets working, the same over here as well. When I look at a couple of kids that I mentor in the city of Newark, and I talk about what is on the agenda for Black, I was trying to get it and I got interrupted, about poverty. You see poverty at a high level. When you talk about healthcare, you see that they can't visit the doctor or go to the dentist, right? And I was going to get into why that is in today's talk, but I couldn't get into that part, right? When you talk about, and it's not just about access to health care, it's also about affordability when we're talking about it. When we talk about affordable housing, these are the things, when you say that younger kids aren't interested in politics, it's because of these types of conversations. When they mention that and say, how can we get it and how do we pay for it? And they tell you how they pay for it. You say, well, why are you so for taxing billionaires? Why are you so for? And this is the reason why. So those things can happen. I understand. We have a system where things you need to be able to pay for, you say, okay. And when we lay out that plan, when the young Black Americans lay out that plan with those issues, you either take it personal, you give individual examples, and not a society, which we're talking about more of a societal problem as well. And the conversation ends with nobody getting their point through. So I'll leave it at that. I wish, again, this conversation would have been more productive, that we could have actually talked more about the Black agenda. But I'd like to appreciate everybody for coming on. The audience, my pops, Brother VP Davis, Brother President Oladapo, and the chapter for inviting us. Thank you, Brother Campana, Brother Jones, for moderating, having a tough time doing it, but I appreciate you, brothers. I appreciate you, Brother Robert, Brother Blake, Brother LSB, for being on the panel.
I first, before we close off, and I know we're a little bit over. Obviously, I want to thank the chapter president, vice president, obviously all the panelists You guys have been wonderful. This has been, honestly, this has been a blast for me. And the reason it's been a blast for me is because we can't agree. And that's exactly what we need to be doing. We can't agree. We need to have these discussions. I actually think this was very fruitful and this was very beneficial because what it did, it offered so many different perspectives. We have to learn from each other. We're all alpha men, we're all professional, we're all good at what we do. But the one thing that we are all different, we all have different perspectives. And it's our jobs to figure out a way to find something in common outside of us being Black men that we can rally behind to go forward. So this session, which was the first, but I'm sure of many, is where we're going to talk about what we can't get along with and try to find something that we can get along with so that we could all drive. Because there was a truth in everything that was said. Maybe not all of it was true, but there was truth in everything that was said. So let's learn from that. More importantly, let's build from that. Brother Jones?
Thank you so much. And before we hand it to the president and VP, I definitely want to thank all of the panelists. The discussion was lively, and I was right to be excited. I definitely would love this forum to be 2-3 hours long and just go at it so that we can find those things that we can move forward on that Brother Companion was talking about. So thank you again. Thank you to the audience for watching. And welcome to Brotherhood Week. It's exciting.
Well, thank you, good brothers. Brother Oladapo, President Oladapo, are you on? Just want to see if he is. I know he had to catch a flight, so he may not be on. So let me end it this way. Thank you all good brothers for participating on this panel. As Brother Jones said, this is the kickoff of our Brotherhood Week for the Alpha Alpha Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We knew the second panel would be some fireworks, and it was. We know that we couldn't get it all done here, and we know that eventually we'll have future discussions on this topic and other topics that are meaningful for our community, and that's what it's really all about. I do want to, before we leave, read the Alpha Phi Alpha mission statement, which is Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated develops leaders, promotes brotherhood and academic excellence while providing service and advocacy for our communities. And this is what it's about. And I'm glad we heard so many different sides of the coin. We'll try to get it a little better flowing the next time. But again, thank you, Brother Jones. Thank you, Brother Campana, for leading this discussion. Thank you, Brother Robert. We go back a long way, good brother, and I knew what you were going to bring, and I appreciate what you brought tonight. Thank you, Brother Blake. You've always been a great brother, and I really appreciate you, and you've been supportive of this chapter. Brother Blackmon, what can I say? You're the Eastern Regional Brother of the Year. So I knew you're going to bring what you were going to bring today, and you're involved in so many things, and the work that you do in the community is just second to none. So thank you, good brother. Brother Will Davis, hey, I have to hear you every day, every morning, every afternoon, and every night. So I knew what you were going to say today. Behind the scenes, I have to thank Brother Nichols for your great work in making sure the stream was going, and we were great today. Brother Dr. Gray, thank you again for all the work that you did behind the scenes, and thank you, Brother Jordan Lester, as well. So thank you all. Have a great night. God bless, and we'll see you the next time.
06, good brother.
06, brothers.
06.